We continue our reading of God's Dream for You, The Chosen, a morning devotional by author Dwight K. Nelson. Today's reading, November 26, A Tale of Two Sauls, Part 3. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. 2 Corinthians 12:10, NIV. Have you ever begged and pleaded with God to remove something from your heart, from your body, from your life, and He didn't? Then you know the passionate depth behind Paul's admission that on 3 occasions, quote, I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, end quote, 2 Corinthians 12:8. Obviously, not quick, now I lay me down to sleep prayers before jumping into bed. These 3 prayer events were wrestling to the mat pleadings for Jesus to take it away. Given my own battles, I find comfort in knowing that Paul struggled with the same weakness. Quote, the life of the Apostle Paul was a constant conflict with self, his will, and his desires, every day conflicted with duty and the will of God. Instead of following inclination, he did God's will, however crucifying to his nature, end quote. The Ministry of Healing, page 452 and 3. And because the greatest Christian of all time battled self, God allowed in Paul's life, even as he does in ours, that which Paul very much wished were not in his life. This is humility's hard part of suffering, for it is one thing to embrace failure when you were the cause of your own failure. Embrace it and learn from it. But it is quite another to embrace the suffering we endure as intentionally allowed by God to lead us deeper into the godlike quality of humility. I cannot walk into your hospital room and declare to you that you are suffering because God has chosen to make you more humble. That would be ludicrous and possibly very mistaken. Suffering is caused, not by God, but by the messenger of Satan, quote unquote. Jesus said, an enemy has done this. But I can walk into my own room of suffering and whisper to myself that perhaps that which I am suffering has possibly been allowed by God for the sake of drawing me more deeply into His love and humility. Paul nowhere describes someone else's suffering as a divine lesson, but without equivocation, he here declares that through divine revelation, he has learned that what he is suffering is intended by God to keep him from becoming exalted in his own eyes. Suffering is the hard pathway to humility. How else shall we explain Paul's bursting into song when after the 3rd prayer event Jesus came to him with a no and a promise, my grace is sufficient for you. Amazing, amazing grace that can transform the one who suffers into the one who glories in the very suffering that glorifies the Savior and humbles himself. Shall we not follow? This concludes our reading today of God's Dream for You, The Chosen.